She called 911 on my curtains. Not a crime, not a break-in, my actual literal window curtains. Why? Because they disrupted the seasonal aesthetic harmony of the neighborhood. And when I said she couldn't come inside to inspect them, she requested a SWAT team. That's when my wife, who just happens to be a 911 dispatcher, picked up the call. If you've never seen a Karen declare martial law over fabric, buckle up. This one spirals faster than her pastel pantsuit on a windy day. If you've never lived under the rule of a zealous HOA, let me paint you a picture. Imagine suburbia, but with the authoritarian energy of a retired hall monitor who just discovered clipboards. That's Cedar Ridge Meadows. Manicured lawn so uniform you'd think the grass had a union contract. Mailboxes all regulation black, 3 feet from the curb, no more, no less. The kind of place where harmony is enforced not through kindness, but citations. And presiding over this cul-de-sac kingdom, one woman, Lenore Whitaker, HOA president, enforcer of decorative conformity, devourer of joy. She was the reason I knew what the term seasonal window ambiance violation meant against my will. When my wife Dana and I first moved here, we were drawn in by the promise of quiet living. She works high-stress overnight shifts as a 911 dispatcher, and I'm a freelance IT consultant who cherishes silence like it's air. At first glance, the neighborhood seemed like a Norman Rockwell painting come to life. No barking dogs, no street clutter, not even a rogue garden gnome. It all looked so peaceful. That is, until we met Lenore. Picture a woman in her late 50s, hair bleached into a permanent helmet, draped in pastel pantsuits that seemed to glow with passive aggression. She wore her HOA lanyard even while watering her own front lawn as if on constant patrol. And in her eyes you could see it, that specific kind of power trip that only blooms when one's authority is backed by bylaws and bored neighbors. Our first interaction came 3 days after move-in, a notice taped, yes, taped, to our front door. It was about the orientation of our trash bins. Apparently we had committed a cardinal sin facing the lid toward the street instead of the sidewalk. I thought it was a joke. Dana, bless her, laughed for 5 minutes straight, but Lenore was dead serious. She knocked that afternoon just to confirm we had read her citation. "It's not personal," she said with a smile so tight it could have cracked glass. "It's about standards. If one bin faces left, they'll all face left. If one goes rogue, it's chaos. Chaos. From a bin lid." That's when I knew this place didn't need a homeowner's manual. It needed a survival guide. And it didn't stop there. 1 week later, she flagged our porch light. "Too bright after 10 p.m., she said, handing me a printed spreadsheet titled, "Approved Lumens for Nighttime Illumination." I wish I were kidding. Then came the email. Yes, she got our address somehow, complaining that our welcome mat was too exuberant in tone. It said, "You better like dogs," which apparently undermines neighborhood neutrality. Dana suggested we replace it with, "We hope your HOA president steps on a Lego." I liked her style. We tried to play nice. We trimmed the hedges to regulation height. We read the HOA handbook cover to cover, a binder thicker than a college textbook, but somehow more painful. We stayed quiet, smiled politely, and hoped to blend in. But Lenore saw our compliance not as cooperation, but as a challenge, like we were hiding something or worse. Independent thinkers. She started patrolling past our house more often, lingering just a beat too long near the windows. That's when Dana started calling her the Lanyard Phantom. I preferred Karen Prime. Either way, something told me we weren't just living in Cedar Ridge Meadows, we were being observed. And with Lenore around, observation was never passive. It was a countdown. We just didn't know what for. Yeah, I should have known it was coming. You don't get that many slow drive-bys, clipboard sightings, and curtain glares without something brewing. One Tuesday morning, I was enjoying a rare moment of peace. Dana asleep after a night shift, the dog curled up at my feet, and me savoring my coffee while the sun filtered lazily through our living room curtains. That's when I saw her. Lenore, mint green pantsuit, HOA lanyard swinging like a sheriff's badge. She stood motionless on the sidewalk, staring at our window as if it had insulted her ancestors. Then slowly, almost ceremoniously, she lifted her phone and took a picture of her curtains. I watched as she zoomed in twice. That afternoon, the email came, subject line, "Immediate interior ambiance concern." I opened it, not sure whether to laugh or unplug the internet. She'd flagged our curtains for seasonal palette incongruity. According to her, our warm-toned drapes conflicted with the HOA's unofficial spring augment transition color cohesion guidelines. Guidelines that, as far as I could tell, were written in invisible ink on the back of her own sense of superiority. Residents are encouraged, she wrote, to adopt internal design elements that reflect the current seasonal mood of the community. Mismatched interiors can lead to neighborhood-wide aesthetic dissonance. I read that line 3 times, trying to figure out if it was performance art. Dana, half awake, squinted at the email and muttered, "Did she just diagnose our living room with a vibe disorder?" The next day, it escalated. A printed notice was placed in our mailbox with a mandatory interior inspection request. That's right, Lenore wanted access to our home for what she called a visual compliance verification visit. No time or date, just please be available. I nearly spit my coffee across the room. The audacity wasn't just unhinged. It had shattered the hinge and thrown the door into traffic. I replied with a short email, "Thank you for your concern. As our home is private property, interior inspections are not permitted under HOA bylaws. Please direct any further concerns to our attorney." I CC'd Dana for good measure. Within 15 minutes, Lenore was on our doorstep. She didn't ring the bell like a normal human. She held it. For a full 10 seconds, you could feel the HOA judgment radiating through the door like gamma rays. I opened it slowly, already bracing myself. "Mr. Reynolds," she said, eyes scanning over my shoulder like I was a guard at Area 51, "I'm here to conduct your compliance walkthrough. It'll only take a moment. We've received multiple anonymous reports about your curtain treatments, and it's my duty to verify alignment with neighborhood ambiance policies." I stared at her, stunned. "You want to come inside to look at my curtains?" "Among other things," she nodded. "We're also reviewing finial design this quarter. You're inspecting curtain rod ends?" We've had issues with non-numeral hardware styles disrupting visual flow. I blinked twice. Dana, now standing behind me in a bathrobe, whispered, "Did she just say neutral hardware? Like it's a homeland security issue?" I stepped outside, closing the door gently behind me. "Lenore," I said, smiling through my molars, "with all due respect, you don't have the authority to enter my home. I've read the HOA charter. There's nothing in there about interior inspections, curtain cohesion, or finial audits. And frankly, this is getting weird." Her face twitched, just once. "Refusal to comply is non-cooperative behavior. It may be escalated to enforcement measure." "You're going to call the curtain police?" I asked, unable to stop myself. She didn't answer. She just stared, lips pressed, eyes squinting like I was confessing to a crime. Then she took one deliberate step back, pulled out her phone again, and raised it slowly. "I'll report this immediately," she said, and in that moment, curtains, coffee, and all, I had the unmistakable feeling that things were about to go from pastel crazy to full-blown HOA horror story. I didn't think she'd actually do it. I mean, sure, Lenore had threatened a lot of things over the past few months, fines for wind chimes that sounded too whimsical, citations for Halloween pumpkins being expressively carved, and one memorable warning about non-uniform snowfall distribution on my driveway. But calling 911 over curtains? That felt like a line even she wouldn't cross. I was wrong, so very wrong. I stood there half expecting her to storm off and draft a 14-page email to the HOA board. Instead, she raised the phone to her ear and dialed 911, not the HOA hotline, not a complaint form, emergency services. She turned her back to me as the call connected, but her voice carried clearly across the lawn. "Yes, hello, this is Lenore Whitaker, HOA president of Cedar Ridge Meadows. I am currently outside a residence where I feel deeply unsafe. The homeowner is exhibiting hostile behavior and has refused lawful entry for a required compliance inspection. He may be unstable. I'm not sure what he's hiding, but I believe he's barricaded himself inside." She paused dramatically, then added, "Please send someone. This could escalate quickly." Behind the door, I could hear Dana drop her coffee cup into the sink and mutter, "Oh, for the love of bum." She stormed into the living room, grabbed her phone, and opened the dispatch console app. As a senior dispatcher for the city, she wasn't officially on shift, but she still had access to the system. She scanned the incoming calls and let out a slow, delighted whistle. Well, would you look at that? Guess who's calling in a code 714 for aggressive curtain obstruction? She turned to me with a grin that was 90% mischief, 10% professional glee. Looks like your living room just became a matter of public safety. Out front, Lenore was pacing like a commander coordinating a military op. Yes, I'm remaining on the scene, she told the dispatcher, who, unbeknownst to her, was sitting right next to me. Yes, I feel faint. He's giving me that look, that non-compliant look. You know the one. Dana was typing furiously into the system, cataloging each absurd phrase with the precision of a surgeon. Requesting units for curtain-based standoff, she said under her breath. Possible finial threat level. Toad. I leaned on the door frame, sipping my now lukewarm coffee, and watched Lenore continue her performance. She looked back toward the house every few seconds as if expecting me to leap through the window in a blaze of curtain rage. Instead, I just waved politely. That seemed to rattle her. She turned her back quickly and resumed her call, throwing in a breathless, "He smirked at me. He smirked. This is psychological intimidation. I might need paramedics." Dana snorted and kept typing. "She's about 3 seconds away from requesting an airlift and a therapy alpaca," she said. Then her tone shifted, settling into something sharper. "Jake, this isn't just funny anymore. She's making a false report to 911. That's a felony if it escalates." I raised an eyebrow. "And how far is she planning to take it?" Dana didn't answer immediately. Instead, she stared at the screen for a long second. Then she looked up with a smile that was all dispatcher calm and just a little bit of vengeance. "Far enough, apparently. She's now requesting SWAT support for your curtains." And just like that, the HOA drama went from passive-aggressive to tactical. We weren't just in a neighborhood squabble anymore. We were in a situation. And Karen, Lenore, wasn't backing down. She wanted a full-blown emergency. And with Dana quietly feeding the system every word of her theatrical meltdown, Lenore was about to get exactly what she asked for, just not the way she imagined. The thing about 911 dispatch systems is they record everything, not just the audio, but the phrasing, the tone, the escalation level, the caller's consistency. And Lenore was checking every box on the delusional crisis caller checklist. Dana didn't even need to embellish. All she had to do was let Lenore talk herself into the kind of trouble that only someone wearing a pastel pantsuit could achieve with such conviction. From my spot inside the house, I could still hear Lenore ranting into the phone. "He's definitely unstable, possibly barricaded. I saw movement. He may be arming himself with something. I think it was metallic." Dana didn't even blink. She flagged the call for potential tactical review, then calmly walked over to the window and peeked through the blinds. "Metallic?" she whispered. "Does she mean your coffee spoon?" I held it up like a weapon. "This deadly, especially if stirred counterclockwise." Lenore wasn't done. "I'm beginning to hyperventilate," she informed the dispatcher. "I feel faint. If he doesn't let me complete the inspection soon, I might need medical attention. This stress is triggering something in my nervous system. Do you have helicopters available? Maybe an emergency airlift?" Dana's eyebrows shot up so fast I thought they'd detach. She tapped the keyboard with a flourish. "Request for airlift logged," she murmured. "I wonder if we charge by the mile." Meanwhile, out front, Lenore was now pacing in tighter, more dramatic circles. From across the lawn, she shouted toward the house, "You need to comply, Mr. Reynolds. Non-cooperation during a community inspection may result in HOA legal action." I sipped my coffee and yelled back, "Is that before or after the medevac?" Her face flushed the exact shade of sun-dried grapefruit. Within 10 minutes, the first police cruiser arrived, lights on, sirens off. A quiet approach, the officer stepped out cautiously, scanning the area, probably wondering if he was walking into a domestic disturbance or a reality TV prank. Lenore rushed him like she'd just spotted reinforcements during the final scene of a war movie. "Here, officer, over here. That's the house. He's inside, possibly dangerous, non-compliant drapery, aggressive demeanor. I've been under emotional siege for 20 minutes. The officer, to his credit, didn't laugh, at least not right away, but his eyes did flick to the windows, then to me, standing calmly behind the glass, holding a coffee mug that said, "Not today, Karen." Another cruiser pulled up behind the first, then a third, then a black SUV with the department logo, and then faintly at first, but growing louder, the unmistakable whoop, whoop, whoop of a helicopter circling overhead. Dana peeked again. "Oh, they brought air support. That's beautiful." She turned to me. Do you have any illegal throw pillows I should know about? Because if this turns into a federal textile offense, I want plausible deniability." I grinned. "Only one. It says, 'Live, laugh, leave me alone.'" Outside, Lenora stood in the middle of the lawn, arms raised like a suburban martyr. "This is what it's come to," she declared, loud enough for the gathering neighbors to hear. "Order must be restored. He laughed at me. That's provocation." The officers began approaching the door. I set down my mug, opened the front door slowly, and stepped out with my hands clearly visible. "Gentlemen," I said, "before we all declare war over window treatments, might I offer some context?" One officer exchanged a glance with another. The one in charge nodded. "Please do." And just like that, the HOA standoff turned into a full-on spectacle. But what no one outside knew, except Dana, was that Lenore hadn't just made a false emergency report. She had escalated it into something that the city would have no choice but to take very, very seriously. The officer leading the group, Sergeant Hall, judging by his name tag and weary eyes, looked like a man who'd seen a lot: car chases, drunk uncles on holidays, maybe even a goat loose in traffic. But I could tell, as he surveyed the scene before him, one HOA Karen flapping like a flag in distress and a man holding a coffee cup in his own driveway, he knew this was a different flavor of absurd. "Sir," he began, calm but firm, "we received a call regarding a potential domestic disturbance and possible barricading. Are you the homeowner?" "Yes," I said, "Jake Reynolds, and the only thing I've barricaded is my sanity behind noise-canceling curtains." "Behind him," Lenore pointed frantically, her voice jumping an octave. "He mocked me again. Did you hear that? He's unstable. That's psychological warfare." Another officer behind the sergeant failed to suppress a snort. I calmly explained the entire situation: the unauthorized inspection requests, her insistence on entering her home, the lack of any HOA bylaw that permitted such nonsense. I even offered to show them the rule book. Yes, I had a PDF saved on my phone. "There's nothing in here about decorative cohesion or curtain rod inspections," I said. "If there were, I'd have wallpapered my garage with HOA citations by now." Sergeant Hall took a long look at the document, then at Lenore, then back at me. "So you refused entry to someone who doesn't have any legal authority to enter, correct?" I replied, and I did it very politely. Dana, now fully dressed and standing beside me, chimed in. "We even offered to write her a thank you note for her passionate service." Another officer stepped up with a clipboard, ironically the same weapon Karen had wielded. "We also need to address the content of the 911 call," he said. "She reported potential barricading threats and requested tactical assistance." "That's serious." Dana nodded, arms folded. "She also requested a helicopter and a medical airlift for herself due to current emotional trauma. That part should be in the transcript." One officer blinked. "Airlifts?" Right on cue, the fire department truck pulled up. Protocol and situations labeled potential threat, barricade with medical. Two paramedics stepped out, exchanged glances, and began surveying the scene like they'd just entered a live taping of Suburban Madness, HOA edition. One leaned toward the other and whispered, just barely audible, "Did the guy throw a curtain at her or something?" Dana, overhearing, muttered, "No, just logic. That tends to short-circuit her." The sergeant approached Lenore, who was now standing next to a carefully arranged folder labeled Emergency HOA Protocols. "Ma'am," he said, voice all business now, "we've determined there is no present danger, no weapons, no barricade, and no threat. The homeowner is within his rights to deny interior access. This is a civil dispute, not a criminal matter." Lenore's jaw dropped like someone had revoked her coupon for power. "But he didn't cooperate. He refused inspection." "That's not a police matter," the sergeant said flatly. "That's, well, an HOA newsletter issue at best." I could see the realization land hard on her face. The weight of what she'd done, the wasted city resources, the helicopter still circling overhead, the fire truck idling with nothing to rescue but her pride, was settling like a bad HOA fine. "But I felt threatened," she insisted. "He looked at me like he had non-compliant drapes." One of the younger officers shook his head. "We don't respond to fashion emergencies, ma'am." And just as I thought the chaos had reached peak ridiculousness, the sergeant took a step back, pulled out a small tablet, and said, "We'll be filing a report. False or misleading 911 calls are taken very seriously, especially those that trigger full deployment. There may be follow-up from the city attorney's office." Lenore paled. You're saying I'm in trouble? Behind her, a neighbor across the street snapped a picture. Another clapped, softly, slow and deliberate. This wasn't just an HOA complaint anymore. It had become a public event. And for Lenore Whitaker, president of Cedar Ridge's Tyranny by Curtain, the curtain was about to fall hard and very publicly. Lenore didn't take the news well. In fact, she took it the way a toddler takes a broccoli ultimatum, eyes wide, voice shrill, limbs twitching with disbelief. I was doing my job, she declared, loud enough for 3 blocks to hear. This is obstruction of community order. It's decorative anarchy. The paramedics, still politely loitering near the fire truck, exchanged another glance that said, we could be saving lives, but sure, let's babysit pastel panic instead. Sergeant Hall didn't flinch. Ma'am, you made multiple false statements during a 911 call, including claims of barricading, potential weapons, and a need for tactical intervention. Our response was based entirely on your words. Those words now carry legal consequences. Lenore's mouth opened, but nothing came out. For the first time since we'd moved into Cedar Ridge, she looked unsure, like someone had kicked the HOA handbook out from under her heels. Dana, standing beside me, leaned in and whispered, she just realized she called in an airstrike over window decor. I might print her face on a throw pillow. The neighbors, who'd slowly crept out of their homes like meerkats drawn to scandal, had now fully committed to front row seats. Mrs. Kaplan was filming discreetly behind a flower pot. Someone set up a lawn chair. And across the street, old Mr. Baker had brought out popcorn. Actual popcorn, buttered, fresh. Always knew she'd go down in flames, he mumbled between bites. Didn't expect it to be helicopter assisted, though. The officers finished taking statements. Dana, professional as ever, provided a full dispatch log, including Lenore's exact phrasing. Airlift, he might be armed with curtain rods. Emergency drapery noncompliance. Each quote more damning than the last. One officer even asked, did she actually say emergency drapery noncompliance out loud? And Dana nodded. Twice, and emphasized it was urgent. The officer wrote something on his clipboard with a sigh that said, this will haunt me at the academy. Then came the kicker. Sir, Sergeant Hall said, turning back to me, you may want to document this encounter thoroughly. The city's legal department will likely pursue restitution for the cost of the emergency response. If Ms. Whitaker was acting in an official capacity when she made that call, her liability could also extend to the HOA if they endorsed her actions. Lenore whipped her head around so fast I thought her bobble blonde helmet might dislodge. What? The HOA is not liable for this. I'm the HOA. From somewhere behind the bushes, a voice called out, not anymore. A day later, the fallout began. HOA board members received formal notifications about Lenore's misuse of emergency services. At an emergency meeting, Irely noted she was unanimously voted out as president. Apparently, her call for SWAT over curtain rods had not only embarrassed the community, but also triggered an insurance audit. The HOA's provider was now questioning whether they'd cover any legal fees at all. Lenore tried to claim she'd acted alone, but when the board found out she used HOA letterhead for her inspection request, it was game over. The city sent her a formal cost breakdown for the emergency response. It wasn't pretty. 4 police units, 1 supervisor SUV, a helicopter, a fire engine, paramedic standby, dispatcher overtime, fuel, administration, and response debriefs. All logged, all billed. Final estimate, $22,487.52. Dana printed it out and magnetized it to her fridge like a trophy. Lenore contested it, claimed she had been misled by ambiguous decor standards. But with the recorded 911 calls, written HOA memos in her handwriting, and witness testimonies, including her yelling neutral finials or nothing, the case against her was solid. The city attorney's office issued a statement. 911 is for emergencies, not aesthetic crises. That line alone trended locally for 48 hours. One of our neighbors even made T-shirts. By the end of the week, Lenore stopped showing her face in the neighborhood. Rumor had it she listed her house quietly, hoping to escape the HOA she once ruled. But around here, memories are long, and so are group chats. Her legacy? A meme, a punchline, a cautionary tale. And somehow still trending. But as we'd soon find out, the real legacy wasn't just a fallen Karen. It was what the community did next. Lenore's departure didn't happen with drama. It happened with silence. No farewell HOA newsletter, no clipboard thumping goodbye parade. One day she was pacing the sidewalks, measuring mailbox paint gloss. The next, her for sale sign was swinging in the breeze like a white flag. But the echo of her reign still lingered in the neighborhood like glitter in a rug, hard to forget and impossible to scrub out completely. In the wake of the incident, something unexpected began to stir. Maybe it was collective trauma, maybe it was caffeine-fueled vindication, but Cedar Ridge Meadows, long subdued under the pastel tyranny of aesthetic alignment, started to wake up. It started small. One neighbor across the street swapped their HOA-approved beige doormat for one that said welcome-ish, depends who you are. Another put up Halloween decorations a full 2 months early, including a 10-foot inflatable werewolf holding a sign that read, "I'm here for the non-compliant drapes." Then came the curtains. Dozens of houses, once bland and uniform like a model home catalog, began to bloom with rebellion. Floral prints, neon stripes, leopard patterns. Someone hung blackout curtains outside the house like war flags. Dana and I watched from our porch, sipping coffee like it was opening night of a very niche revolution. "It's like Paris in '68, she whispered, if the revolution was about window treatments. The HOA board, now leaderless and nervously licking its wounds, called for a temporary moratorium on ambiance enforcement while they reviewed internal policies. That's legalese for we're too scared to knock on anyone's door right now. Meanwhile, someone anonymously started printing stickers and slapping them on street signs. A cartoon Karen holding a measuring tape with the words, "Power finialed" under it. Even the mailman wore one on his satchel. "They gave me 5, he said, deadpan, it's for morale." And yet, amidst all the jokes and jokes within jokes, the HOA was facing very real financial consequences. The city's cost recovery bill, over $22,000, had triggered a clause in the HOA's insurance agreement. Because Lenore had used official HOA communication channels for her inspection request, the HOA was considered partially liable. That meant their insurance wouldn't cover the costs unless the community voted to assess a special fee to cover it. You can imagine how that meeting went. They held it in the clubhouse 2 weeks later, standing room only, the treasurer sweating like a nervous substitute teacher. Explained the situation. We need to recover funds to cover the legal exposure. A one-time assessment of $280, 0 cents per household. Because of her, someone interrupted, because she called in a chopper over curtains? Yes, he admitted. Unless we vote to hold the former president personally liable. It wasn't even close. The community voted 142-3 in favor of sending the full bill to Lenore directly. One of the 3 dissenting votes was from her cousin on Elm Court, who quickly apologized and offered brownies. That night, someone slid an envelope under our door. Inside was a thank you card signed by 27 neighbors. On the cover was a cartoon curtain with a badge that said certified threat. Inside, someone had scrawled, "Thanks for standing your ground." Literally. Dana cried, laughed for 10 minutes. But the moment that sealed it came the next morning. I walked outside to get the mail, and a line of houses had changed their doormats. Not just 1 or 2, nearly half the street, all different, all proudly unapproved. The one in front of ours read, "Curtains closed for Karen." And just like that, Cedar Ridge Meadows didn't feel like a place ruled by clipboards anymore. It felt like a neighborhood, a loud match, slightly petty, but finally free neighborhood. If you walk through Cedar Ridge Meadows now, you'd barely recognize it. Not because of anything drastic, no graffiti, no anarchy, but because it finally had personality. Lawns weren't identical. They were individual. Kids chalked dragons on the sidewalk without fear of visual clutter citations. And yes, the curtains came in every shade, from rebellious maroon to unapologetic pineapple yellow. In a community once suffocated by sameness, a little chaos turned out to be a breath of fresh air. Dana and I didn't set out to become neighborhood legends, but legend has a funny way of happening when a Karen flies too close to the sun on wings made of curtain policies. People we'd barely spoken to before started stopping by. One guy dropped off fresh sourdough in appreciation of your anti-authoritarian window treatment stance. Another neighbor handed Dana a mug that read 911, the real HOA hotline. Someone even left a potted plant on our porch with a tiny sign that read, "Planting seeds of dissent." The HOA board, now reduced to 4 visibly humbled members, held a public meeting to announce the appointment of an interim president. But this time, the candidates weren't the clipboard-wielding types. They were the quiet ones, the let people live folks. Dana nominated a retired librarian named Ms. Landry, who wore orthopedic sandals and once told Lenore to take her bylaws and shove them alphabetically. He won by a landslide. One of the first acts under the new leadership was a full repeal of the internal ambiance alignment initiative, Lenore's pride and joy. In its place, the board implemented something shockingly reasonable: mind your own curtains. That was the entire clause, just 5 words, printed, laminated, and tacked proudly to the community bulletin board. That sign became a selfie hotspot. Someone painted it on a wooden plank and hung it above their garage. Cedar Ridge had a motto now, and honestly, it slapped. I even got my own petty revenge. Remember those curtain rod finials that nearly triggered an airlift? I replaced them with custom-made ones shaped like tiny middle fingers. Tastefully done, of course. Polished bronze. HOA legal-ish. When I posted the photos anonymously in the neighborhood Facebook group, they went viral. Captioned simply, "Compliance never looked so expressive." As for Lenore, last I heard, she moved to a retirement village in Arizona, one without an HOA. According to a mutual friend, she still carries a laminated copy of the Cedar Ridge bylaw book, just in case. Old habits die hard. But around here, her name had become less of a threat and more of a unit of measurement. Whoa, that's a level 3 Lenore move, or easy there, let's not go full Lenore. And me? I still enjoy my quiet mornings. Still drink my coffee by the window. Only now, I don't watch the sidewalk for threats. I watch it for neighbors walking their dogs, laughing, living. No more curtain paranoia, no more pastel surveillance, just a peaceful, imperfect, beautifully human street. The only clipboard I own now holds a checklist for backyard BBQs. And on Sunday mornings when the light hits the curtains just right, I think back to that moment when standing up to ridiculous rules didn't just save my sanity, it changed the culture of the whole block. Not through screaming, not through defiance, just by knowing the rules better than Karen did and being patient enough to let her hang herself with her own policies. The neighborhood didn't need a hero. It just needed someone to say, "No, thank you, you're not coming in today," and then call him the wife. Sometimes the most powerful form of resistance isn't loud, it's lawful, calm, and just clever enough to let the truth do the heavy lifting. Jake didn't raise his voice. Dana didn't break protocol, but together they showed what happens when petty power meets people who read the fine print and refuse to be intimidated by a clipboard. Karen didn't fall because someone fought her. She fell because she believed her entitlement outranked logic, legality, and common sense. In a world full of little tyrants hiding behind fake authority, sometimes the best revenge is letting them talk and record everything. So the next time someone comes knocking, demanding access to your life under the guise of decorative cohesion, just smile and ask, "Is that in writing?" Have you ever witnessed a HOA go full Karen? Share your story in the comments, because petty power needs public receipts.